Evan always thought his college life would be predictable. He imagined late-night study sessions, quiet mornings, and a roommate who minded his own business. For months, things went exactly that way. His first roommate, Noah, had been the perfect match, calm, quiet, and almost invisible. But when Noah suddenly moved to another city for an internship, Evan had no idea how much his life was about to change. The university housing office sent him one short email. A replacement roommate has been assigned. Please prepare to welcome them. Nothing else. No name, no photo, not even basic info. The email almost felt like a warning. Evan shrugged it off. How bad could it be? Maybe the new roommate was just a shy freshman or someone who transferred late. On the day the new roommate was supposed to arrive, Evan cleaned the room as much as he could. He wasn't the tidiest person, but he didn't want to scare anyone away. He folded clothes, stacked books, even opened the window to let fresh air in. As he waited, he checked his phone again and again. His small video blog had recently gained a little attention, mostly because he filmed funny things around campus. He wondered if he should record the moment when the new roommate arrived. Maybe it would be boring, or maybe it would be comedy gold. He kept his phone near him, just in case. Late in the afternoon, he finally heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, careful footsteps, then silence. Evan paused. Had the person stopped at the door? He reached for the handle just as someone knocked, but it wasn't a normal knock. It was gentle, almost like the person wasn't sure how knocking worked. Come in. Evan called. The door opened halfway, and a tall figure stood there. Not tall in a normal way, tall in a way that made Evan blink several times. The person had very pale skin, almost silver in the light, and bright eyes that didn't seem to rest on anything. The newcomer stepped inside with stiff movements, like someone trying to copy walking by watching a video of it. Hello, the stranger said in a calm, even voice. I am Zur. Evan stared. Hi. Are you the new roommate? I am assigned to this living unit, Zur answered. The voice sounded polite, but rehearsed, as if the words were memorized from a guidebook. Evan forced a smile. Okay, cool, welcome. Zur walked farther into the room and looked around with intense curiosity. Not normal curiosity, deep focused curiosity. Zur studied the bed like it was a rare treasure. The curtains, the lamp, the tiny cactus on Evan's desk, everything seemed fascinating to them. Evan slowly reached for his phone. He didn't want to record secretly, so he held it openly. Do you mind if I, film? I make small videos about college life. That is acceptable, Zur replied. I also wish to document my experience. Evan didn't know what that meant, but it sounded harmless. He hit record. Zyrr placed the suitcase on the floor. It didn't look like a normal suitcase, no zippers, no handles, just a smooth, metallic box. When Zur tapped it twice, it opened on its own, silently unfolding into compartments. Inside were clothes, but not the type Evan expected. Simple, plain outfits that looked identical, each folded with perfect precision. Evan whispered into his camera. Okay, so the new roommate is interesting. Zur turned to him. If you intend to communicate quietly with the device, you may continue. I do not mind. That comment made Evan pause. Most people would ask why he was whispering. Most people would be confused. Zur wasn't confused at all. They just accepted it instantly. Something felt unusual, but Evan couldn't put his finger on it. As Zur placed clothes in the dresser, Evan noticed the newcomer's movements again. No wasted motion. Every gesture exact and controlled, like a robot trying very hard to act human. So, where are you from? Evan asked. Zur hesitated for a moment, as if scanning through possible answers. I am from a distant region. You may call it another system. Evan laughed. Another system, like a different school system, or a different country. Zur blinked slowly. Yes, a different one. It wasn't much of an answer, but Evan didn't push. Maybe Zur was shy, or maybe English wasn't their first language. Still, something about the phrasing felt odd. After unpacking, Zur walked to the window and looked outside with astonishment, as if the trees and sidewalks were completely new. This environment is very green, they said. It's just a normal campus, Evan replied. Kind of boring, actually. It is not boring, Zur said seriously. It is full of life, motion, sound, complexity. Evan raised his eyebrows. Most students complained about the campus being too quiet. But the more Zur spoke, the more he noticed they seemed to study every detail like a scientist examining a rare creature. You said you're here too. What was it? Document your experience, Evan asked. Yes, Zur said. My program requires field observation. I am here to understand your society. Evan assumed they meant a research program, maybe anthropology. That made sense, sort of. So you're a researcher? In a manner of speaking, Zur said. I observe, record, and learn about human habits. Evan froze. Human habits? Why say it that way? Most people would just say people. Before he could respond, Zur approached the desk and pointed at the cactus. May I ask what this organism is used for? It's a plant, Evan said. It's decoration. It just sits there. You keep it for emotional satisfaction, Zur asked. Evan laughed awkwardly. Not really emotional. It just makes the desk look nice. Zur nodded as if this explained a great mystery. Evan turned his camera back to himself. Okay, I don't know who this person is, but they are the most unusual roommate I've ever had. Zur continued exploring the room, touching objects softly, examining them, occasionally making small notes and a tiny device that lit up when tapped. Every time Evan tried to peek at the screen, it went blank. Confidential, Zur said simply. Evening arrived, and the two of them sat on their beds in silence. Evan scrolled through his phone while Zur stared at a cup of water like it held answers to the universe. Finally, Evan spoke. So, what made you choose this university? It was chosen for me, Zur answered. It is the appropriate location for observing human behavior in a natural setting. Evan nodded slowly. He tried to act normal, but inside he was spiraling. Who talked like that? Who described college students as human behavior in a natural setting? Are you a sociology major? Evan asked. Something similar, Zur replied. The room grew quiet again. Evan wondered if all this was an elaborate joke. Maybe the housing office was part of a prank show. Maybe Zur was an actor. That would explain the strange speech, the odd suitcase, the unusual interest in basic things. But then Zur turned their head and looked straight at him with calm, steady eyes. I will do my best to blend in. I hope I will not cause distress. The seriousness in the voice made Evan drop his suspicion. Zur wasn't joking. If this was a prank, it was the most dedicated one in history. You're not causing distress, Evan said gently. We'll figure everything out. Zur relaxed slightly, as if relieved. Thank you. Your cooperation will assist the study. Evan blinked. The study? Zur nodded. Yes. My study of human life? That was it. Evan grabbed his phone again and whispered, I think my new roommate might be an alien. He meant it as a joke for his viewers. Just a funny line. Something that would get a laugh. But as he looked over at Zurkam, observant, quietly studying the room, he felt a tiny spark of doubt. Maybe it wasn't a joke. Maybe, just maybe, his new roommate really wasn't from Earth. The next morning began earlier than Evan expected. He woke up to a soft humming sound. At first, he thought it was the heater, but when he opened his eyes, he saw Zur sitting cross-legged on their bed, hands resting on their knees, eyes closed. The humming didn't come from a machine, it came from Zur. Evan sat up slowly. Oh, good morning. Zur opened their eyes and nodded politely. Good morning. I am practicing my morning alignment. Alignment? Evan repeated. Is that like meditation? Yes, Zur answered. I must adjust my senses each day to understand this environment better. Evan didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. Cool, sounds peaceful. Zur stood up with smooth, precise movements and walked toward the window. They touched the glass gently, as if feeling the temperature of the light itself. Your star rises very quickly, they said. You mean the sun? Evan asked, trying not to laugh. Yeah, it does that every day. Zur stared at the rising sun like it was the first one they had ever seen. Maybe it was. Evan wasn't sure anymore. Breakfast was the next challenge. Evan grabbed a granola bar from his drawer, but Zur seemed unsure what to do with theirs. They rotated the bar in their hands like a puzzle box. Do you know how to open it? Evan asked. I am analyzing it, Zur said seriously. The wrapper is strange. It's just plastic, Evan explained. You tear it like this. Zur watched closely as Evan opened his own bar, then copied the motion exactly. It was so perfect that Evan felt like he was watching a high-precision machine, learning a new command. Zur sniffed the bar like a scientist examining a specimen, then took a careful bite. Their eyes widened slightly. This has a surprising texture, they said. Very dense. That's kind of the point, Evan replied. Energy food, I see. Zur nodded and ate the rest with tiny, careful bites. Evan again recorded the scene on his phone. He didn't mock Zur. He genuinely found their reactions fascinating. His viewers did too. The video from the night before where he jokingly called Zur an alien already had far more likes than usual. After getting ready, Evan and Zur walked to campus together. The outside world seemed almost overwhelming for Zur. They studied everything. The cracks in the sidewalk, the birds hopping across the lawns, the way people carried backpacks. At one point, a student on a skateboard sped past them, nearly hitting Zur. Zur froze, eyes wide. Is that a threat? They asked. No, Evan said, holding back a laugh. That's just a normal student here. People skateboard everywhere. Is it safe? Zur asked. Usually, Evan answered. Unless you're clumsy. Zur looked genuinely concerned. Does the board control them? No, Evan said. They control it. Zur stared at the now distant skateboarder. I see no indicators showing where the balance comes from. Fascinating. Evan couldn't help smiling. Everything normal to him was brand new to Zur. When they reached the cafeteria, the situation became even more confusing for Zur. The room was loud, crowded, and filled with so many food smells that Zur visibly stiffened. Are you okay? Evan asked. There is a very high amount of sensory input, Zur said evenly, but I will adjust. Evan led them through the line. Zur pointed at almost everything, asking short, rapid questions. What is that? Why is it shaped like that? Why does this one have a strong smell? Why is this one cold? Why does this one shine? It's just food, Evan repeated again and again. When they reached the end of the line, Zur chose a fruit cup and a slice of toast. They stared at the toaster for a long moment before whispering, Your technology is unpredictable. It's just a toaster, Evan said. It glows with heat and then stops without warning, Zur replied. Unpredictable, Evan didn't argue. If he were trying to understand everything from scratch, maybe the toaster would look mysterious too. As they sat down, a few students stared. Zur didn't seem to notice, but Evan did. Zur looked different, there was no denying it. Not in a dramatic way, but enough to draw attention. The way they sat, the way they watched everything, even the way they held their fork looked unusual. One girl approached their table. Hi, I'm Mia. Are you two new here? I've been here a while, Evan said. He pointed at Zur. My roommate, though, just transferred. Oh, cool, Mia said. Where from? Zur gave the same mysterious answer as before. A distant region, not near here. Mia blinked. Okay, like overseas. Yes, Zur said, though the answer seemed more of a guess than a fact. Mia smiled through the awkwardness. Well, welcome. If you guys ever want to hang out, let me know. After she left, Evan whispered, that was your first social interaction. Did I perform correctly? Zur asked. You're not performing? Evan said, laughing. You're just talking to people. I must make sure I follow the correct behavior patterns, Zur replied. I do not want to attract unnecessary attention. Well, Evan said slowly, you kind of already do. Zur tilted their head. How so? You ask a lot of questions, Evan said. Not in a bad way, just, you're very curious. That is my purpose, Zur said simply. Classes were the next test. Evan walked Zur to the lecture hall and helped them find a seat. Zur positioned themselves perfectly upright, hands folded, eyes focused with sharp attention. When the professor walked in, Zur leaned slightly forward, as if preparing for a mission. The lecture was about basic human behavior, the perfect topic for Zur. The professor talked about emotions, communication, and social development. While most students looked half asleep, Zur's hand shot up frequently. Is it possible? Zur asked at one point, for a human to express an emotion they do not feel? Yes, the professor answered, confused. That's called masking. Zur nodded deeply, writing notes at incredible speed. Another time, Zur asked, how do humans decide which individuals to form long-term connections with? That depends on many things, the professor said, now clearly curious about this new student. Shared interests, personality, values, things like that. I see, Zur said quietly. Evan watched from across the room, amazed. Zur didn't seem embarrassed or nervous. They were completely focused, like every answer was a crucial part of some bigger puzzle. After class, students whispered and pointed. Who's that new person? They talk like a documentary narrator. They know so much but also nothing. If Zur noticed, they gave no sign. On the walk back to the dorm, Zur asked Evan, did I participate correctly? You asked more questions than the entire class combined, Evan said. But that's a good thing. I must learn quickly, Zur said. There is much I do not understand. Humans communicate with more than words. Your expressions, your tones, your gestures, they all carry hidden meaning. That's normal, Evan said. People don't just talk. They also show emotions with their faces and bodies. Yes, Zur said. I am practicing, Evan asked. Zur suddenly gave a huge, wide smile. Too wide, too perfect. Like they had seen a picture of someone smiling and tried to copy it exactly. Evan nearly choked laughing. Okay, maybe tone it down a little. That's kind of intense. Zur slowly relaxed the smile. Like this. A little more, Evan said. Zur adjusted again, this time giving a gentle, soft smile. It wasn't perfect, but it looked much more natural. There you go, Evan said. That one's good. Thank you, Zur replied. I will store this version. Evan wasn't sure if they were kidding or not. As they reached their dorm, Evan checked his phone. His latest video, Zur examining the granola bar, already had thousands of views. Comments were pouring in. Who is this roommate? They act like an alien. More videos, please. Evan felt a mix of excitement and guilt. He wasn't making fun of Zur, but he was definitely using them for content. Was that wrong? Maybe, but Zur didn't seem to mind being recorded. They even encouraged it. Inside the room, Zur sat down and opened their mysterious device again, making quiet notes as symbols glowed across the surface. What are you writing? Evan asked. My observations, Zur said. Your behaviors are extraordinary. Even simple actions carry meaning. You laugh when you are happy, but also when you are uncomfortable. You smile to be polite, even when you do not feel joy. Humans are complex, more complex than any description I was given. Evan sat on his bed, watching them. I guess we're complicated creatures. Yes, Zur said softly. Very complicated. There was a moment of silence. Tomorrow, Zur said finally, I must learn about another important topic. What topic? Evan asked. Zur looked at him calmly, as if discussing the weather. Human bonding. How humans decide who becomes close to them. Evan felt a chill. He didn't know why, but something about the way Zur said it made the moment feel big. Like the start of something unexpected. Whatever Zur wanted to learn next, Evan was sure it would lead to chaos. And an even wilder set of videos. The next day began with a strange announcement from Zur. Evan had just finished brushing his teeth When he returned to the dorm room and saw Zur standing perfectly still in the center of the floor, hands behind their back like a soldier waiting for orders, "I have decided," Zur said calmly, "that today I must study human bonding." Evan froze mid-step. "Bonding? You mean like friendships?" "Friendship is one form," Zur said. "But there are others. I must understand how humans decide who becomes important to them. This information is essential." Evan swallowed. "Essential for what?" "For my research," Zur replied. "Your species chooses bonds in complicated ways. Emotional, social, and practical factors all combine into unpredictable results. I must learn how this choice is made." Evan wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or nervous. Zur was studying humans the way people studied rare animals. And for some reason, today's topic felt heavier than the others. This wasn't like opening a granola bar or learning how a toaster worked. This was deeper, something that involved feelings, intentions, connections. And Evan wasn't sure he was the right teacher. So, "How do you want to learn about it?" he asked carefully. "I have prepared questions," Zur said, lifting a small glowing device. "I will ask them 2 humans at random. This will give me a wide sample." Evan's heart nearly stopped. "Wait, random people? Like strangers on campus?" "Yes," Zur said with complete seriousness. "This will allow me to understand your bonding patterns. If I interview a variety of humans, I can compare the answers and determine common ground." Evan imagined Zur walking up to strangers and asking awkward, direct questions about friendships and relationships. It would be chaos. Maybe funny chaos, but chaos all the same. Okay, Evan said quickly. "Before you ask anyone anything, maybe let me check your questions first." "That is acceptable," Zur replied, handing over the device. Evan tapped the screen and felt his stomach twist. The questions weren't wrong, but they were way too straightforward. What qualities must a human have to become important to you? How do humans choose a person to stay close to? What signals show trust? What events begin a close bond? How long does it take for humans to become connected? These weren't bad questions, but if a stranger walked up and asked them without warning, most people would panic. "We need to make these simpler," Evan said. "More friendly." "I am friendly," Zur insisted. "I know," Evan said with a tired laugh. "But humans get scared when strangers ask personal questions out of nowhere." Zur blinked. "Why?" "Because it feels too direct," Evan explained. "We like building trust first. You start with small conversations. Then, maybe later, you ask deeper things." "I understand," Zur said slowly. "Small conversations first, then deeper ones." "Exactly," Evan said. "But how do I know which conversation is deep?" Zur asked. Evan hesitated. "You just feel it." Zur stared blankly. "That does not help." And so, after breakfast, Evan agreed to guide Zur around campus. He told himself he was helping, but a part of him also knew this would make unbelievable content for his video blog. As they walked down the busy walkway between buildings, Zur observed groups of students sitting together, laughing, talking, sharing food. "These humans appear bonded," Zur whispered. "Yeah," Evan said. "They're friends." "How did they become friends?" Zur asked. "There's no one way," Evan said. "Sometimes people meet in class, sometimes they share interests, sometimes they just get along right away." Zur nodded as if absorbing every detail. "I see." They approached the student lawn where dozens of people sat around. Zur studied them carefully, narrowing down their target like a scientist choosing samples. Evan felt more and more nervous as Zur took a step forward. "Wait." Evan grabbed their arm. "Remember small talk first?" "Yes," Zur said. "Small talk. Like asking how someone's day is going," Evan suggested. "That is simple enough," Zur said. They walked toward a student sitting on a bench. Evan prayed that Zur wouldn't scare them away. Zur stood in front of the student, paused for 1 second to rehearse the natural smile Evan taught them, then spoke. "Hello, how is your day proceeding?" The student blinked at the unexpected greeting. "Oh, good. You?" "My day is productive," Zur said. "I am gathering information." "Oh," the student said, looking confused. "For a class, for my study of humans," Zur answered honestly. Evan quickly jumped in. "They mean sociology. They're doing a big project on social behavior." Oh, the student relaxed instantly. "Cool, good luck with that." Zur nodded politely and walked back toward Evan. Small talk complete. "You did great," Evan said. "I can proceed to deeper questions now," Zur said. "Not with the same person," Evan said urgently. "You need time. You can't jump from small talk to deep talk in 5 seconds." "How long must I wait?" Zur asked. "There's no exact number," Evan said. "Sometimes minutes, sometimes days, sometimes months." Zur stared at him, as if he had just described the most complicated math equation in the universe. Evan sighed. "Let's try something easier. I'll show you how I talk to my friends." He walked Zur toward the library, where a few of his classmates usually hung out. When they saw him, they waved. "Hey, Evan," one of them called. "Hey," Evan said. "This is my new roommate, Zur." Zur lifted a hand in a careful greeting. "Hello, cool name," one student said. "Where are you from? A distant region?" "Oh," they said, unsure how to respond. "Nice to meet you." While Evan chatted casually, Zur watched every movement, every tone, every gesture. Evan could practically see the gears turning in their mind. After a few minutes, one of Evan's classmates asked him about an upcoming exam. Zur listened to the conversation with full concentration. "You two appear close," Zur said suddenly. The table went silent. Evan scratched his cheek, embarrassed. "We're just classmates, but you share concerns. You exchange information. You use casual tone," Zur said. "These appear to be signs of bonding." The classmates laughed awkwardly, but no one seemed offended. Evan quickly pulled Zur aside. "Okay," Evan whispered. "You can't analyze people out loud like that. Humans don't like being studied." "But I am studying them," Zur said, confused. "Yeah, but," quietly. The rest of the day followed the same pattern. Zur asked questions, Evan explained. Then Zur attempted to apply the lesson with mixed results. When a group of students talked about their favorite movies, Zur listened and then asked, "Does sharing preferences create emotional closeness?" The students laughed. I guess." During lunch, Zur watched two people exchange snacks and whispered, "Food trade indicates trust." At the campus fountain, Zur studied a couple walking hand in hand. "Physical contact," they murmured, "a sign of strong bonding." Evan gently nudged them forward before they stared too long. By the time evening came, Evan was exhausted. Teaching Zur was like guiding a hyper-curious child who asked questions no one expected. Back in the dorm, Evan collapsed on his bed. "Today felt longer than a week." "It was productive," Zur said. "I learned much." "Like what?" Evan asked. "That humans bond through shared time," Zur said. "Through talking, exchanging ideas, laughing, helping each other, and showing trust." "That's actually pretty accurate," Evan admitted. Zyrr nodded thoughtfully. "I also learned that humans choose their close bonds carefully. They do not trust isolatingly." "That's true too," Evan said. Zur looked at him quietly. "But humans also form bonds without noticing. Small actions build connections over time." Evan felt something strange in his chest, a warm feeling. "Yeah, that's also true." Zur tilted their head. "I believe I have already begun forming a bond with you." Evan blinked, surprised. "With me?" "Yes," Zur said simply. "You assist me. You speak to me kindly. You guide me. These are signs of human bonding. So logically, we are bonded." The room fell silent for a moment that felt strangely emotional. Evan smiled softly. "Yeah, I guess we are." Zur recorded something on their device. "This is an important result. Humans bond unexpectedly." Evan laughed lightly. "That's just how it works." Zur looked up. "Tomorrow, I must study another topic." "Please don't let it be scary," Evan said. "It is important," Zur replied calmly. "I must learn how humans choose long-term partners and companions." Evan choked on air. "Wait," Zur nodded. "This process seems central to human life. I must understand it." Evan covered his face. "Oh no. Oh no no no." And somewhere deep inside, he knew. Tomorrow would be absolute chaos. When Daniel woke up the next morning, the whole apartment felt strangely quiet. Usually Lyro made soft humming sounds when he was awake, a natural background noise that came from his alien lungs. But today, Daniel heard nothing. It was almost too silent, like the whole building was holding its breath. He stepped out of his bedroom and found Lyro sitting on the couch with his back perfectly straight, hands folded neatly in his lap, staring at the wall as if he had been frozen. Daniel blinked a few times and waved a hand in front of him. Lyro didn't move. "Hey," Daniel said, walking closer. "You good? You look like a paused video." Lyro slowly turned his head. His expression was calm, but there was a small hint of worry in his eyes. "I am attempting to understand something new," he said quietly. "It is related to yesterday." Daniel felt his stomach twist. Yesterday had been intense. At first, Lyro had struggled to understand the concept of human attraction, and later he had panicked, worried he had somehow disrespected Daniel's personal boundaries. They had talked everything out, but Lyro still seemed to be thinking deeply about it. "What's going on in your head now?" Daniel asked, taking a seat next to him. Lyro didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the apartment slowly, as if observing every detail. "I am trying to understand emotions," he finally said. "Your emotions, and my own." Daniel exhaled. "Okay, emotions, big topic. That's not something you figure out in one night," he said gently. "I know," Lyro replied, "but humans feel so many things at the same time. Excitement, fear, curiosity, confusion. You feel all of these with one heart. How do you survive this?" Daniel laughed. "Barely." Lyro tilted his head in confusion, and Daniel smiled, unable to stop himself from appreciating how sincere the alien was. Lyro didn't pretend to understand something if he didn't. He didn't hide emotions or act tough. He just asked questions, honestly and openly. "So," Daniel said, leaning back, "what emotion exactly are you trying to figure out?" Lyro lowered his gaze. "The one I felt when I thought you were upset with me. It felt like my chest tightened, but not because of physical harm. It was inside the mind and the heart. On my world, we have something similar when our minds are not aligned. But this felt different, personal." Daniel's expression softened. "That was worry. And maybe guilt." "Guilt," Lyro repeated carefully. "A strange feeling. It was unpleasant. It usually is." Lyro looked thoughtful for a moment, then continued. I did not want to trouble you, and I especially did not wish to misunderstand something important. Daniel rubbed his neck. You didn't do anything wrong. You just asked questions, and that's okay. Lero nodded slowly. I will continue learning, but I must ask another question. Will you answer honestly? Sure, Daniel said. Preparing himself, Lero looked directly at him, his eyes bright and curious. Do all humans react the same way you do? With humor when facing discomfort? With patience when teaching someone who does not understand? With lightness when explaining something heavy? Daniel blinked. The question felt deeper than it first sounded. I don't know, he admitted. People are different. We all respond in our own ways. Lero considered this carefully. Then I am fortunate, he said softly. I could have landed near someone less patient. Daniel felt a sudden warmth in his chest. It wasn't embarrassment, and it wasn't pride, it was something in between. He tried to shrug it off casually. Well, you also crashed into my balcony, so I didn't exactly have a choice. Lero let out a soft laugh, a quiet, melodic sound. I am grateful for that crash then. Daniel couldn't help but smile again. This silent, thoughtful morning was calmer than usual, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Lero's presence had a peacefulness that Daniel had slowly grown used to. It was strange, having an alien roommate, but at the same time, it felt completely normal now. After a long pause, Lero stood and walked toward the window. He pressed his palms to the glass, staring at the people on the street below. Humans live at such a fast pace, he murmured. Look at them, walking quickly, talking rapidly, thinking constantly. It feels like their minds never rest. Why must everything move so fast? Daniel thought for a moment. I guess that's just life here. People have things to do. Jobs, families, plans. Sometimes it feels like there isn't enough time, so everyone keeps running. Lero turned and studied him carefully. Do you enjoy living this way? Daniel hesitated. That question was too honest. Sometimes yes, he said. Sometimes no, Lero nodded. Then I hope you find more moments to breathe. I have seen you rush as well. Even when you tell me not to worry, you carry your own worries quietly. Daniel froze. That felt uncomfortably accurate. You're observant, he muttered. I must be, Lero said. Earth is new to me. You are new to me. I learned through watching. Just then, Lero's eyes suddenly brightened. There is something else I must understand today. You told me humans breed not only through biology, but through building families, friendships, and connections. I want to observe that. Daniel blinked. Observe. Family relationships. Yes, Lero said. Real ones, not just in videos or books. Daniel scratched his head. Well, I can't just summon someone with a family in front of you. That's not how it works. Lero thought for a moment. Then perhaps we can visit a public place where humans interact naturally. A park, a cafe, a community center. Daniel was surprised. Lero didn't usually suggest going out in public for too long. He was still adjusting to Earth's noises, smells, and constant motion. But now he suddenly wanted to explore on his own terms. Sure, Daniel said. A park is probably the easiest place to start. Lero nodded and grabbed his small bag, the one he always carried when they went outside. It had a few tools, a communicator, and a notebook where he wrote down new things he learned about humans. Daniel found that notebook adorable, but he would never say that out loud. When they stepped outside, Lero looked around with wide eyes as usual. The sunlight reflected off his pale blue skin gently, giving him a soft glow. Daniel kept him close in case he needed help blending in. But today, Lero looked surprisingly comfortable. As they walked toward the park, Lero pointed at different groups of people. Those two are friends. Yes. They laugh easily around each other. Yeah, Daniel said. Looks like it. And those children, Lero continued? They are siblings. The smaller one follows the bigger one closely. Daniel nodded. Probably. Lero watched everything carefully, taking mental notes. But then something unexpected caught his attention. An older man sat alone on a bench, feeding the birds. His posture was relaxed, but his gaze looked far away, as if he were lost in thought. Lero froze. Is he part of a family too? Daniel nodded. Everyone is part of a family, or used to be. Lero repeated softly. Daniel sighed. Sometimes people lose family members, or sometimes they live far away, or they grow apart. Lero stared at the man a long time, then whispered, humans feel this too. The emptiness of being separated. Daniel nodded quietly. Yeah. Lero walked closer to the man, slowly and gently. Daniel hurried after him, worried Lero would say something to direct, but Lero simply bowed his head politely and asked, May I sit here? The man nodded with a kind smile. Lero sat beside him, silent but present, observing with respect. Daniel stood nearby, pretending to use his phone, but actually watching the whole interaction. After a few minutes, the man spoke first. Nice day, isn't it? Lero nodded. Yes, a peaceful day. Daniel's eyes widened. He had never seen Lero sound so natural, blending into human conversation. The two sat together, feeding birds, talking about simple things, weather, seasons, the quietness of mornings. Lero listened carefully to every word, absorbing it all like a sponge. When they finally walked back home, Lero looked thoughtful but calm. Today, he said softly, I realized something important. Humans do not only grow by making families, they grow by caring, even for strangers. even for a flock of small birds. Daniel smiled. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Lero touched his chest gently. I think I am beginning to understand something new about myself too. I feel connected to this place, to these people, even if I am not from here. Daniel felt something warm again, stronger this time. That's good, he said quietly. Lero stopped walking and looked at him directly. Daniel, do you feel the same? Do you feel connected to me? Daniel swallowed. For a moment he didn't know what to say, but the look in Lero's eyes wasn't demanding or forceful, it was gentle, honest, and full of curiosity, and Daniel knew the truth. Yes, he said softly. I do. Lero smiled slowly, a rare and beautiful smile he only showed when something deeply moved him. Then I will continue learning, he whispered, not just about humans, but about us. And for the first time in days, Daniel felt completely calm. The days after their trip to the park felt different in a quiet, gentle way. Daniel noticed it the most in the small moments, how Lero seemed more relaxed, how he walked around the apartment with a lighter step, how he hummed a soft tune he must have learned from Earth. It was the same apartment, the same routine, the same early morning coffee, smell drifting through the kitchen, yet everything felt warmer somehow. Daniel didn't mind it. In fact, he liked it more than he expected. One morning, Lero stood in the kitchen, staring deeply at the toaster. Daniel had seen him study many human objects, microwaves, fans, umbrellas, but for some reason, the toaster always fascinated him. Today was no different. It is interesting, Lero said without turning around. This small machine takes something cold and makes it warm, like emotions. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. Are you comparing bread to feelings? Yes, Lero said seriously. Humans often begin cold, uncertain, but with time, their hearts warm. Like toast? Daniel laughed so hard he almost spilled his coffee. Lero looked confused again, as if trying to understand why his perfectly logical explanation was funny. Did I misuse a comparison? No, Daniel said, still smiling. It was just cute. Lero blinked slowly. I am not cute, I am learning. That's what makes it cute. Lero finally turned, studying Daniel's face as if he were examining a new star. You are in a cheerful mood today. Maybe, Daniel said. Maybe I just slept well. Lero gave him a thoughtful look, like he silently knew there was more to it than sleep. Later that day, Lero set up his small notebook on the coffee table. It was already thick with pages filled with his handwritten notes about Earth, sketches of objects, and small observations about human behavior. He treated the notebook like a treasure, always careful with it. Today, Lero said, clearing his throat, I want to conduct my final study about human bonding. Daniel frowned. Final? You mean you're finishing your research? Lero hesitated. Yes, and no. My official assignment is coming to an end. My report to my planet is almost complete. Daniel froze. Oh, he said quietly. So you'll be leaving soon. Lero looked down at the notebook. That is what I must decide. Daniel felt something twist inside him, not anger, not disappointment, but something strangely heavy. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. Okay, so what's this last study about? Lero took a seat on the couch, and Daniel joined him. I want to understand, Lero said softly, what humans do when they fear losing someone important. Daniel's breath caught. Why that? He asked, trying to sound casual. Because Lero said, I believe it is something all humans experience. It is also something I feel, but I do not fully understand it. Daniel swallowed. It's normal to feel worried when you care about someone. Lero nodded slowly. That is what I wish to explore. They sat quietly for a moment, listening to the distant sounds outside, car engines, people chatting, a dog barking, life going on as usual. But inside the apartment, everything felt fragile. Lero turned to Daniel again. Tell me, if someone you cared about might leave, what would you do? Daniel looked down at his hands. He didn't want this to be an emotional moment, but his chest felt heavy. I guess I'd talk to them. Be honest. Tell them how I feel, even if it's hard. Lero listened carefully, his expression softening. Is that what you are doing now? Telling me how you feel? Daniel let out a small sigh. I don't know, maybe. Lero leaned closer, his voice gentle. Then I will be honest too. Daniel looked up, surprised. When I first arrived, Lero said, I did not understand humans at all. Everything confused me. Your ways of speaking, your emotions, your pace of living. He paused, then continued slowly. But now, Earth does not feel like a strange world anymore, and you do not feel like a stranger. Daniel felt warmth spread across his chest again. The same warmth he had felt many times around Lero. I'm glad, he whispered. Lero took a deep breath, a gesture he had learned from watching humans. I do not know if I belong here forever, but I know that I belong here now. With you, Daniel's heart tightened, not painfully, just intensely. Lero, you don't have to rush the decision. You can take your time. Lero nodded. I will, but I also want to complete my study. I want to learn how humans show that they care for someone, in simple, everyday ways. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And how do you plan to do that? Lero looked around the apartment thoughtfully. I want to try living like a human for one day, doing the things humans do when they are close to someone. Daniel laughed lightly. You mean like a normal day? Yes, Lero said. A full human day with connection, Daniel agreed. and they started with something simple, cleaning the apartment together. Lyro took it surprisingly seriously, wiping surfaces with intense concentration. Sometimes he cleaned the same spot 3 times because he didn't trust he had done it correctly. Daniel teased him a little, and Lyro responded by narrowing his eyes in a playful way. Next, they cooked lunch together. Lyro chopped vegetables with precise movements, treating it like a science experiment. He sniffed each ingredient, analyzing the aroma. Human food preparation is very emotional, he declared. Every spice changes the feeling of the dish. Daniel couldn't argue with that. After lunch, they watched a nature documentary. Lyro watched with fascination as animals migrated, built homes, protected their groups. Nature is full of connection, he said softly, even without words. Later they went outside for a walk. Lyro seemed calmer than the day before, more present. He noticed small details: children laughing, a couple walking their dog, 2 friends sharing snacks. Everything mattered to him. Everything was part of his study. At sunset, they returned home. The sky outside the window glowed orange and pink, bathing the apartment in warm light. Lyro stood near the window watching the colors shift slowly. "This planet is beautiful," he whispered. "I did not see that at first." Daniel joined him. "It grows on you." Lyro turned to him, like connections do. Daniel nodded. They stood there for a while, side by side. No tension, no worry, just quiet comfort. Finally, Lyro spoke again. "I think I understand what humans do when they care." "Oh yeah." Daniel smiled. "What's your conclusion?" Lyro looked at him with a calm, steady expression. "They stay. Even if the future is uncertain. Even if the world is confusing, they stay with the person who makes them feel safe." Daniel felt a deep warmth spread through his chest. So Lyro continued softly, "I will stay. Not because of my mission, not because of research. I will stay because I choose to." Daniel's throat tightened. "Really?" Lyro nodded. "Yes, I want to learn more. Not just about Earth, but about life with you." Daniel didn't know what to say, but he didn't need to. The room was filled with quiet understanding. Lyro opened his notebook and wrote something on the last page. Daniel leaned over to peek. It said, "Final discovery: humans do not connect through biology alone. They connect through trust, time, and shared moments. I have found all 3. Daniel felt his eyes sting, not from sadness, but from something warm and overwhelming. Lyro closed the notebook gently. "My study is complete," he said, "but my journey with you is not." Daniel laughed softly. "Good, I'm glad you're staying." Lyro smiled in that quiet, rare way of his. "Then tomorrow, we begin a new chapter. One without research. One with living in for the first time." Since Lyro landed on his balcony, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not for the world, not for the future, but for something simple and real. A friendship, maybe even something deeper, that was now truly beginning.